Well, good morning, everybody. We might have a couple more people join us, but we can get started. So I'm Dylan. I am the SGA president, and thank you for joining us on our last town hall of our summer town hall series. This is the Westminster Student Advocacy Forum. So many of you were available and joined us a couple weeks ago, or actually it was just last week, at the academic town hall where we talked specifically about course modalities and academic programs, but this program today is intended to talk a little bit more about the Westminster transition in kind of a well-rounded way, focusing on facilities and other transitional areas. So we'll definitely be able to get some questions answered today. And for the program, I'm going to turn it over to Donna Jean and Marshall.
Thank you, Dylan. Just a little bit of background. So those of y'all who may not have been able to participate last fall or even realize what we were trying to do last fall, we decided that it would be a good idea to perhaps create an opportunity for all of the students in Westminster College of the Arts, so both Westminster Choir College and the School of Fine and Performing Arts, to have an opportunity to meet with the dean and myself to discuss issues surrounding the transition, and so we could be a little bit more proactive in celebrating the things that excite you, but also addressing those issues that are of concern. And so we created this advocacy student forum so we could hear from the students. We did have one meeting at the Westminster Choir College in Princeton in the Anna's Playhouse, 13 pizzas, and I think 16 people showed up. So a lot of people got pizza in the dorms that night. And then, things happened and we were not able to convene a group since then. And so we really wanted to start off this year. There is a specific SGA WCA group to be working with Marshall and I to help address issues and opportunities as they come up over the next few years. And we thought this would be a great way for us to kick off the academic year, to meet with everybody who was interested in talking with us about what you're looking forward to in terms of opportunities and concerns. But we did think before we got started in all of that we would actually give you an update on facilities. So Marshall, I don't know if you want to add anything or if you just want to turn it over to Mike.
No, thank you. That's a good introduction. So we're going to ask Mr. Recca, who I think most of you know, Vice President for Facilities, all-around good guy, and this summer in particular, magician. We're going to ask him to just give a quick overview of where we stand right now, and then we can get into the specifics of what that might mean in terms of questions or anything else. Mike, if you don't mind.
Thank you. And I think magician is too strong a word, but more of an illusionist. That said, it's been a very busy summer working through the program and the projects that were outlined as far as the campus transition. But let me start by thanking you all for your time and your patience through this process. So we'll start with Omega House, where the faculty will be residing. So we are pretty much getting our certificate of occupancy by Monday. The pianos have been delivered into every room for the faculty. Their furniture is coming in the middle of next week into the following week. So we are ready to occupy that space and give the faculty ample time to come in behind that and set their offices up the way they desire. So every room has now its pianos, has individual air conditioning units. The bathrooms have been upgraded. The common areas have been upgraded. There's new lighting, new flooring, and there's enough spaces in there for 35 faculty to deliver the curriculum in their spaces, the voice lessons and piano lessons, things like that. And we're pretty much ready to grow. We just took construction fence down and just put new grass seed, leveled it out, and just be working on the outside pretty much, putting new signage up and some other things in the next week or two, but that building is ready to go. So any questions on Omega?
Okay, yeah, you said 35 faculty?
Yes, it can accommodate 35 faculty. That includes adjuncts.
Is that the number of faculty that we needed to accommodate, or are there going to be some people that have to go into like fine arts?
Perhaps I should jump in, Mike. So this will accommodate all the full-time faculty coming from Westminster Choir College, all the adjunct, what we call applied faculty coming down from Westminster. So for instance, many of you had done some work with Dr. Elizabeth Scheiber. As you may or may not know, she has transferred into the Department of Foreign Languages and Cultures. So her office is actually in the Fine Arts building with the rest of the foreign language faculty. But the music faculty are all going into Omega, and there's actually a little bit of room left over that we will be accommodating some of the applied voice faculty from the music theater program as well. So we've got everybody in there we need to get.
Cool, thank you.
So moving on, we'll move to the library, the Moore Library. Right now, as we speak, shelving is being assembled for all the volumes coming from Talbot. The areas have been renovated. The transaction desks and the circulation desks have all been framed out and are almost ready to begin to be built out. All the flooring areas are done. All the space has been reconfigured. The offices have been built. So we're at the point now where we're working on both campuses with the library faculty from Talbot as well as Moore to bring the 65,000 plus volumes down, all the sheet music, all the archive material, all the CDs, all those pieces are now being identified and boxed up, and they'll be loaded on a truck next week to start their way down here when the shelving is complete. So we're working from the top floor of the Moore Library, the penthouse area. The shelving's going in there right now. We'll drop down to the circulation area for Talbot because we're building a library in a library. So the Moore Library main function area will be on the main floor, and on the floor above, we go ground 1, 2. So on the first floor will be the Moore Library desk and transaction area. Then will be the Talbot. So the whole Talbot library will be set up on the next floor up, which is floor 2. And then all the archive material, the CDs and additional scores, all those pieces will go up in the penthouse. So essentially you're getting a large section for the Westminster transition of the Moore Library on that second floor and the entire penthouse. And it will have its own circulation desk where they would process materials for you, all those pieces, all being built as we speak. It's going down to the wire. I'm not going to sugarcoat it, but it's going to get done for the semester. So we're looking to get the certificate of occupancy the week of the 24th, and then move folks in and get rolling for the first day of classes. Questions on library?
Yeah, if we go completely virtual this semester, which there was an email sent out saying that we might, given New Jersey circumstances, will we be allowed to access the library? Will there be a limit on the amount of people allowed in? Will we be allowed to check out materials and take them home with us, or is that an issue for contaminants? I know that that's not really a question for you, but anybody that might know.
Provost Ferdine, do you want to take that or do you want me? You're muted.
I've just unmuted. We were having this conversation this morning, and so at this point, working within New Jersey guidelines, which we will have to do, Charlie, because of the space occupancy we can have. We do anticipate having the library open, but we will have to maintain the occupancy that we're required to maintain for indoor spaces. And so we're still working our way through that. We will have, I believe, some curbside pickup, but yes, you'll be able to be able to go in and check out books or music or whatever in the library, or it will be provided to you in some manner.
Right.
Thank you.
And can I ask that same question, but for practice rooms?
So that one's a little different in the sense that we still have to abide by all New Jersey guidelines for social distancing. We have to abide by both New Jersey and Rider University protocols for cleaning. So we are still operating under a plan that I think we may have talked about a bit last week, which is that all facilities of the university will be cleaned twice a day, and overnight will be the disinfecting that goes on. In fact, I just noticed today when I came into this building, there's a nice brand new bucket sitting right outside the Fine Arts Suite that has the big disinfecting wipes. So that those are being installed literally all over campus. with regard to any place where there's a piano, there will be a second group of wipes that are essentially isopropyl alcohol based, because that will not harm the keyboards. And we're going to be asking that people use those to wipe down the instruments before and after use. So with regard to actual access to the practice rooms, we've been talking a lot about how this will work. Some of the practice rooms are in residence halls. So again, we're having to respond to what the government tells us, the governor, excuse me, tells us about access to places. And then internally, Student Affairs is working with us for how we can grant access to people who are not in a residence hall that has practice rooms, how they can either get to those or get to the ones that are being installed in the basement of Guild Chapel. So our point is, yes, there will be access to those rooms. We're still working on exactly how. And one of the things we're going to have to look at, once we have a sense of how many students are actually needing access to practice rooms, we may have to go to a scheduling type of operation in order to ensure social distancing and time to clean. Because I'm sure most of you would agree, you don't want to go in as I'm walking out, you don't want to be walking in. We need at least a little bit of time and so on. So we're still working on those protocols, but there will be a way for people who are on campus to be able to get to practice rooms.
And then can I add on to that? Does that also translate to rehearsal spaces like the Spitz and the Yvonne Theater?
And in fact, that's in what we're working on right now internally in the College of the Arts, because I think behind your question, for those of you who are not aware, Kristen is in theater. If you happen to see Hamlet last year, she didn't look like she looks right now, but she was Hamlet. What happens typically in theater in particular, and occasionally in dance, is that we use other spaces. We use the actual theaters, we have used the Yvonne lobby, we have used classrooms. So we're looking at exactly that same thing, how to gain access. What we've been doing since, probably, well, it was before we split, so it had to be January, actually, performance management from the Westminster campus and auxiliary services here, including Monty up in there, who helps book all of the requests for spaces. We've been talking about how to accommodate the somewhat specialized needs of the Westminster College of the Arts. So how could you request a large classroom in order to practice or record? How could you request a stage if you had 6 people rehearsing a scene and you need to be socially distanced and all of that? So it is our plan to make that possible. We're now trying to figure out exactly how. Likely it's going to go through the regular scheduling mechanism, but don't quote me on that just yet.
Thank you.
So to the practice rooms, Marshall so eloquently talked about our cleaning. We're installing the Corona practice rooms right now. So they'll be done at the end of this week, well, tomorrow or Monday. And then we move into the installation of the additional 13 practice rooms in the chapel beginning Monday or Tuesday. And so when all's said and done, the one in the BLC, the 6 new in Kroner, and the 13 in the chapel will be done by about the 17th or 18th. So they'll all be installed and being wired up and ready to go. So they'll all be ready for the semester. And then, so going from there, I go to dailies and I talk about the MCC lab and the piano lab that we're putting in there. 2 new labs that are going to coincide with the other 2 labs that exist. So we created a hallway. We took the back part of dailies and we created this connection between the existing classrooms, put the 2 new classrooms in, and then built 2 organ practice rooms and an organ faculty studio. So now you have basically the back half of the dailies building is designated for piano labs, MCC, and organ practice. Those should be done somewhere around the 24th or 25th, depending on how quickly we move with getting some of the furniture. We're moving stuff from Cottage 7. We're getting some newer things for the MCC. We got to get the organs taken out from the Princeton campus and brought down. All that's going to happen in the next several weeks. And so those spaces will be ready for the first day of classes also. Moving on
sorry,
to,
do you
yes.
know what organs you're bringing over specifically?
Yes.
All right, Marshall, that's you.
I was going to say, this is a temporary for this fall. We're bringing over, you may know there's a NOAC practice organ called a hot dog. and that's coming down temporarily. And we're bringing back, there was a large Rogers electronic 3-manual full pedal board electronic organ that we're storing. It's going to come back for the fall into the 2 practice rooms while we refurbish a NOAC and a Holt camp from the Princeton campus. I'm not sure if Patrick has already picked those up, Mike. I'm not sure.
He hasn't picked them up yet, but he said because I'll get to that, he's coming next week.
So when the organ builder comes next week to begin the installation in Gill Chapel, they're going to run up to Princeton and pick up those other 2 that are going to go back to his shop to be refurbished. They will be put in over the semester break in December to replace the hot dog and the electronic. So we'll have those 2 there for the fall. We are moving the NOAC studio, the Bristol One studio, the NOAC that's in there, that is being cleaned up and refurbished as we speak. That will be coming down into the faculty studio that is in that back part of Daly's. For those of you who have already, who are on the Lawrenceville campus or have done work here from Princeton, when you walked in that glass door, you walked straight into a piano computer lab. We used to call it the Daly's Lab. I suspect we'll get a new name for it. And to the right was a classroom where many of you had classes. When you turned to your left, you were staring at a wall. That's now the hallway that Mr. Recca was speaking about. And the Daly's Lab is a mirror to Cottage 7. So those of you who have worked on this campus, or if you've worked there in Cottage 7, that's the exact same lab, all the same equipment. So there'll be 2 of the same lab, pianos plus computers. And then next to that will be the Music Computing Center moving down from Talbot Library. Again, that will be piano, they're synthesizers, but they're going to be connected in case we need them for piano secondary. So 2 fully functioning piano/computer labs are going in. So that'll bring us to a total of 3 computer piano labs, plus in Lake House, there was a fairly large classroom that until about 5 years ago had been a piano lab. It is now going to be a piano lab again. Those of you who worked in the Princeton campus, Bristol 2 plus 5 more keyboards are going into Lake House, and that will be a discrete piano only. There are no computers. That'll be a piano secondary lab. So it can be used for piano secondary, for the musicianship lab sections, and so on.
And any like performance classes that have previously been held in that Lake House classroom, I assume would go to like the new fine arts classrooms?
Exactly right.
Okay.
So I suspect that Mr. Recca is going to go to fine arts, so we'll wait for that, but you're exactly right. We have new rooms going in.
Awesome. Sorry to jump the gun.
Dylan, just tell me what building you want me to talk about, and I'll just lead right into it, all right? So, fine arts. So we took what was the south side of fine arts, a series of classrooms that used to be where the registrar was on the ground floor, the BHP honors classroom, as well as a TV studio type classroom for media services. And we took that spine all along there and gutted the whole thing. And in doing so, we were able to forge 3 classrooms with pianos, a music education room, the bell choir room, an instrument storage room, as well as the Presser Voice Lab and a seminar room. So the whole wraparound of that corner of the building now has been dedicated to these new classrooms to support the Westminster Choir College programs, as well as Westminster College of the Arts. So what we're going to have there is the bell room will be in the back of the building, so that when they have to take the bells and run out with them, it's right by it has an access right out the back door, right in the truck and go. And then we have 3 classrooms that will have pianos in them, and Marshall can explain exactly what each use is going to be, but 3 brand new classrooms, sound attenuated, new electrical, new lighting, new flooring, all those pieces. And then what used to be 110, which was a digital media type room, now is the music education classroom with instrument storage right next to it. Next to that then will be that small seminar room that I mentioned for smaller group gatherings. And then next to that will be the Presser Voice Lab. It's an Erdman right now that's coming down and dropping into that space. So that's about a 6,000 square foot area that we just gutted and redid to accommodate these program needs. Marshall, do you want to add anything to that?
Just I'll get a little more specific because there are quite a number of Westminster students on the call today. So if you picture a U shape, and this is the top part near the parking lot, which is behind me where I'm sitting, that is the bell choir room. Those of you who have done work here before, those of you who are fine arts students, this used to be the BHP Honors Seminar Room and a classroom. That's now been gutted and it's one big room across the top. Sound attenuation, we're bringing down the tables and the bells and everything from Westminster. As you go down that long side, that's what Mr. Recker just called the south side. This is the lake, this is Centennial Lake out there. So that long side has 3 brand new classrooms. If I remember correctly, they seat 28, 32, and 32. And then at the very bottom, as you turn the corner, what used to be the film studies room, room 110, that is now primarily going to be music education because right next to it is the closet for all of their instruments. So that is a large room. If I remember, that one is, I think, 44 student capacity. Then the instrument storage room, then a little 20 student, 20 person seminar room. If you're familiar with the Cullen Center, it'll be similar in size to the Gast seminar room, Cullen 15, right as you walked out of the building. It'd be about the same size, full technology, upright piano, and so on. And then the last piece on this, here's the hallway and the stairs. The last room is the new Presser Voice Lab. So if you have ever done work in the current Presser Lab over in Erdman Hall, it was very functional, pretty tight on space. And it's now about half again as big. I think the total, Mr. Recker, was about 400 square feet in the new one.
Yep.
And I believe the old one was like 270, so it's quite a bit more square feet. Dr. Price has worked very deeply with Mr. Walt Eddy, who's a sort of construction supervisor, if you will, and they've designed where the counters are going and where the computers are going and where the equipment is going. And we also have now, there were 3 isolation booths that were no longer being used by the communications department. And they graciously gave us 2 of them. One is going to go into the Presser Lab. So this is literally an isolation booth. It's not totally soundproof, but we're talking pretty dead. So you could go in there and do recording, do work on a computer in there. If you're trying to do studies of your vocal cords and all that, that'll be very easy. The other one is actually going to go into the current Dailies lab for popular music students to use when they're doing voiceovers and things like that. So two of those ISO booths that I think be pretty exciting for people to get to use those. So this wing, as I say, is going to have 4 larger classrooms, all with pianos, 1 small one with pianos. That's going to help us replace things that used to be in that Lake House classroom. We still have the Dailies classroom, but this will be 3 or 4 more spaces where things that require a piano in particular can be taught.
What he said.
Sorry I sound excited, but this is new facilities. I think people are going to be really happy. We're talking new chairs, new technology. I mean, this is new stuff. I think people are going to be pretty impressed with what they see.
Yep, absolutely.
I'll be quiet.
Thank you, Marshall. Any questions on that? Okay, then we'll move to the chapel. So the chapel, and let me preface this part. I just want to put a shout out to the contractors and everybody we've been working with through a pandemic. We've actually had to shut down a couple of times because we had to retool ourselves working in a pandemic type environment. It's very difficult to social distance when you're building walls and tearing things down. And so we had to put all new, stations in to wash and do all those other things. And, we've been challenged through this whole project. And, the goal has always been to be ready for the fall semester. And that's what I'm telling you, all this should be ready for the fall semester. We even got the hurricane. The chapel got water in it. We lost power for a day and a half. We're still fighting through it. And we're gonna get there. So the chapel is going to be the centerpiece of everything that we're doing, because it got a complete gut renovation. So the entire building the building envelope got done, new roof, new windows, new doors, new exterior entrance, storage room built on, all these pieces that are come on the outside to support the program to make the building much more attractive and more functional. And so We're making the building fully handicap accessible with an elevator and a ramp leading into the building. We're going to keep the ramp on the back of the building too, where there's some handicap parking spaces. We'll start in the basement. The basement will feature the 13 practice rooms that Marshall had alluded to earlier that I had said. Those will be those self-contained Wenger type units. We are also going to keep the building as a house of worship. So we still will perform religious ceremonies in there for any organization, campus organization, club organization that has a religious affiliation. So there's spaces, there's about 750 square feet in the basement that's been designated for those purposes. So there's like a chaplain's room and some other spaces. We're putting in a gender inclusive bathroom, as well as a men's and women's room down there. And there'll be a lobby. When you come down the elevator, come down the stairs, there'll be a lobby for sitting and waiting to use practice rooms and other spaces, as well as a little kitchenette in case, we wanted to prepare. Now we can't use that during COVID, but after that nonsense is over, we'll move forward and we'll have this space in there. So it's almost like a little hangout space before you use the practice rooms or whatever else. Upstairs in the main body of the chapel, that's where we're putting the shiny organ that Marshall mentioned. That starts on Monday or Tuesday. They've taken the shiny organ, completely dismantled it, cleaned it, upgraded it, fixed all the components, put a new shell on it, new wooden casing and surround, and they're bringing that entire thing in about 6,000 pieces and reassembling it right there where the altar used to be. If you're familiar with the Guild Chapel, we tore that altar out, we leveled the floor so that you come in all on one level. That organ will go against the wall and will be the centerpiece of the whole chapel main body. And we're also putting in there so it's a multi-purpose. We're putting a sprung floor in for dance. We're putting in various teaching components. So we're gonna have technology, screens. We're gonna have seating that we're taking from the Playhouse up at Westminster, bringing it down for academic instruction. We're also buying 300 audience chairs because that's the capacity of the room. When we do a performance or something in there, we can do that. It can hold the full symphonic choir, long ways, all 235 or 238 folks will fit in that space to rehearse. And like I said, we can use the whole space in multiple directions, doing multiple things. So it's rehearsal, recital, choir, performance, it's everything. It'll have a sound booth, it'll have sound system, it'll have theatrical lighting, it has sound attenuated paint on the ceiling, the peak of the ceiling, as well as sound attenuated panels that take the sound and bounce it and fill the room. And so we've designed this with an acoustician and some other folks that anywhere in the room that you perform or any direction that you try to do something, the sound is balanced and it can be, it enhances it. So the space is designed for so many different things. The storage room off the side, we'll have 2 grand pianos in there. We'll be able to store our chairs, music stands, risers, all kinds of different things with double doors that we'll just be able to move right in and out and go between different events and do things. I got a little excited because it was the big renovation. It makes me excited. And then throughout the building, in the back, you're going to have the green room, you're going to have a bathroom, and you're going to have a storage room to support those functions. And then outside, like I said, we're going to have new landscaping. We're going to have all new roof, and some of the facades been redone. And the whole building has been improved to be this hub for the Westminster College of the Arts, Westminster Choir College, to do all the things necessary. And I'll let you, Marshall, if you'd like to aggrandize on that, if you like.
Just again, music specific stuff for those of you that would have use. There will be a 7-foot and a 9-foot grand piano accessible. So depending on what the event is, bigger piano, smaller piano. Those of you who are familiar with the Scheide organ, when it was installed at Princeton, the console was actually part of the casework of the organ. We have separated the console. It will be on a dolly and a tether. And there will be 5 different points in the chapel to connect the organ. So if, for instance, we rented the chapel for a wedding, somebody might want the organ at the front. Somebody might want it at the back. We might do a performance where it needs to be on the side. So there'll be 5 different places to connect the organ to the pipe system. And that entire console itself, it'll be a new console on a dolly, on a wagon, we usually call it, and it will be able to be stored in that same side storage area. So if we need the entire floor flat and clear, we can clear the entire floor, no chairs, no pianos, no organ, and it's just wide open. The fact that the floor is sprung is very helpful because we not only have dance, but we also have movement-based courses. So there's a course at Westminster Choir College called Movement for the Actor and Movement for the Singer, and so on. And we have very much the same courses, especially in music theater and theater. So there's actual dance, and then there's movement. So I could see a stage combat course being taught in here, because we also want to try not to kill your knees if we can help it. So it'll be a very flexible space. We invited faculty. They wouldn't let me pick the colors. Most of you know I'm colorblind.
There's a reason for that.
But we invited some faculty to come in, and they've selected a very, what I'm told is a very nice color palette, and that will be installed as part of what we're putting in for the colors of tiles and all of that stuff. So I think it's going to be a very warm and inviting space. I'm particularly excited that the downstairs area will be accessible by elevator, because most of you know that was not. And although we haven't had very many students with physical challenges, occasionally we have had that. So now it's a fully accessible building, and that the idea of the kitchenette, once we're past the COVID situation, as you know, we have accompanists who are working with students all the time in practice rooms. They might have to kill a half hour. It's a place where they could grab a cup of coffee and sit and relax, that kind of thing. So a very flexible space. The idea of being able to accommodate music, theater, dance, worship, it's pretty exciting again that we can build something like this right now.
So schedule-wise, this has been our biggest challenge, again, because it was our most invasive project, and with a few things happen along the way, and then moving the semester a little bit earlier, you know, that was just sprinkled that on top. It's our hope, and we're pushing for the TCO, the week of the 24th, to get the inside all done and ready for the first day of classes. What you will see us working outside in through September for landscaping, you know, finishing touches on the outside, maybe, you know, some spackling or, ephes coat or something on the outside of the building. We will work outside of the building to finish the project. Our focus is getting the certificate of occupancy to teach there and learn there and practice there for the first day of classes. But we will be working around the building just so we keep that all on the up and up.
And Guild Chapel will also be one of the places where, as we figure out how to do it, students would be able to try to reserve the facility, whether it be for organ practice on the big organ, whether it be for a group of students to socially distance rehearse, whether it be for dance or theater or monologues or duets or soliloquies or whatever. It will be another one of those facilities along with BLC, stages, all of that.
And then we're working on Lincoln Hall. We just finished Lincoln Hall for renovation as a residence hall. You know, it was run down a little bit. It was old. And so we've upgraded the bathrooms, and I don't know whether Leanna wants to say anything about it because I took her on a tour the other day, but I think it came out really nice, and it's a nice environment to live with the 3 rooms and the common bath, and you know, redid all the hallways, the lighting, the flooring, painted the whole place. We're putting new stair treads in the main stairwell. We're going to do the other stairwells later in the year, but it came out very nice. So if you get the opportunity to live in Lincoln, I encourage you. It's very nice. So that's how I spent my summer vacation.
Oh, but you forgot a few things. What about the Center for Diversity and Inclusion?
Oh, okay. I didn't know whether we were just talking about Westminster projects or what. Okay. I'm thrilled to talk about this one because it's near and dear to Donna Jean and Leanna's hearts. We were actually able to move the College of Continuing Studies, the radio station, and some of our finance offices on the ground floor of the BLC right outside Cranberries to different locations. CCS is now where the art gallery was in the BLC on the top floor. Registrar, to make room for the classrooms that we built, we moved Registrar up to that floor as well. So now you have CCS, Registrar, Financial Services, Career Services, Cashier, all now is a complete one-stop on the top floor of the BLC. So that was something we had our eyes on for years to do, and those spaces came out great. And like I said, you go up on that floor, we've got new carpet in the hallway, the new offices, the place has been painted, and you have all those services in one location. So once we moved all those things, oh, and the radio station went over to Fine Arts on the second floor, that replaced where the dean's office was, who moved to Lynch Adler Hall. That's all those domino projects. We also did those over the spring as well. But we created this 3,800 square foot opening on the ground floor that we are putting the Center for Diversity and Inclusion and the student navigation offices back to back in a very highly visible area that it's going to be able to serve the students in multiple ways. And I can't even get into it, Donna, Jean, or Leanna. I'm expecting that you will talk about all the functions that happen there, but these spaces are going to be very nice. So if you picture where the package lockers were, where the bookstore is, right across the way in that front and center area where the radio station was, are these two very important offices that will support the campus community. So I will turn it to my colleagues to tell you how wonderful it's going to be to have them.
Sure, I'll talk for a second. I'll try to keep it brief and bring it back to the Westminster transition specifically, but the Center for Diversity and Inclusion space is going to be gorgeous. We're very excited about it. And the Center for Diversity and Inclusion, whether it's in the in-person space or even virtually, for those who are from home, really will support our marginalized students who identify for marginalized populations, and our multicultural student organizations. As well as continue to promote education for the whole campus community around diversity, equity, and inclusion. So a lot of things going on, and we're really excited about the space to signify that.
And the Student Navigation Office is a holistic approach to helping our new students, particularly our freshmen, acclimate to Rider University, to begin to plan their 4 years and their academic progression through the 4 years, and to also keep an eye on people. So because we're integrating it with a new software system that's going to allow us to know when we need to be reaching out to a student and say, hey, I've heard you've missed a lot of class, or we understand you may be struggling. Can we help you get you to the right resources, etc. The Student Navigation Office will also have the primary responsibility for advising all students to meet their engaged learning requirement. So we're very, very excited about getting this up and running. So any questions from y'all?
Yeah, I've got one.
Sure, go ahead.
So you said the faculty and adjuncts and a few other people will probably fit in Omega House. What about the offices in Williamson that aren't for faculty, but more so administrative positions that are specific to WCC?
What a great question, Charlie. I appreciate that very much. So some folks, 6 people are moving to Centennial. Shouldn't say are moving, they're already moved. If you're familiar with the campus, if you walked out the back of the Fine Arts building behind me, there's the parking lot. If you're standing in that parking lot and look to your right, there are a series of what used to be fraternity houses, and at some point before that, they were residence houses. One of them is called Centennial House, and it currently houses enrollment and marketing and university communications. And there was room there to be able to create special offices. So we have moved all of performance management and all of external affairs into Centennial House. Let's see, who am I missing? So the Dean's Suite.
You?
I have already had an office here. We've created another office for Pat Guyton, who's kind of be right behind that door that you see right there. She'll be sitting out there in the outer office. Judy Simmons will be in a room that is actually off the lobby of the Yvonne Theater. Dr. Abrahams is going to be on the other side of this wall, and the Associate Dean Sullivan for Fine and Performing Arts will be next to him. In this suite, then, you can find both Associate Deans and me. And then, let's see, Debbie Williamson, the faculty secretary for Westminster faculty, is going to be in Omega House with the faculty. There'll be a faculty lounge there with a copier and all of the things that they're used to having. And Ms. Williamson will have her office right next to that. Janet Guthrie, who many of you knew from the EOP and tutoring office at Westminster, has accepted a position as the secretary to the 2 departments in the School of Fine and Performing Arts. So she will serve fine arts and theater and dance. She will be sitting kind of right behind me. If you knew this suite before, last year is where Dr. Vanita Nilakanta was housed. She had 2 offices. She now has just her English office, although she is continuing as acting chair of the Fine Arts Department. So Ms. Guthrie will be here serving all of the fine and performing arts faculty as well. So who am I missing? I think that might be Marjorie Klein had already had an office here. She'll be located on the 2nd floor of Fine Arts Building 243, I think, but don't quote me on that. So we've accommodated all of those staff coming down.
Any other questions?
I'll talk, I saw Chris right here. Chris Body is going to move over to the BLC. So he's going to be on the 2nd floor of the BLC.
And the assistant registrar will be in the registrar's office on the BLC as well.
So yeah, a lot of departments absorbed folks coming down into their office suites too, like CCS, some others. I don't know, Drew, if you want to mention what's happening with your team that's transitioning down.
Yeah, sure. There's a couple people that are moving into the GM Belly Hall for the admissions recruitment process, and that will be smooth, and we are ready for the new cycle.
Are there any other questions, particularly about the fall semester, or do you want to we can move on to just talking a little bit more about the transition? Drew, did you want to say something?
I was just going to add to that on the financial aid and bursar side, that was a position that was existing on both campuses as well. So that's a seamless integration into the the Bart Luedeke Center. So they're ready to go as well.
Okay. All right, great. Any questions about the fall semester, the upcoming fall semester?
I had a question about the fall semester. Well, it's not from me, it's from one of our students in Alaska. She's not able to be in the meeting today, but she said, is there a university policy that will be accommodating students who are from different time zones or international? She has multiple professors claiming the university requires them to stick to their scheduled class times, but that means she'll be taking classes around like 4 a.m. And she was wondering, is there any way for professors to accommodate for this?
I can answer that from only the perspective of the College of the Arts. The university is addressing it globally, but what we have suggested to the faculty, when they responded to our request for the teaching modality, we asked them to consider this matter, because especially in the College of the Arts, we have a number of students that are far away and then some that are kind of far away. So many of you know, or perhaps yourself, from California, even just those 3 hours, if it's an 8 o'clock in the morning class, that's not exactly the best time for most people other than me. I'm a nighthawk. But then we also have an international population in the College of the Arts where people could be 8 hours all the way up to 14 hours one way or the other. So that is a big piece of this. So we asked faculty to consider that, and that if they were aware that their particular roster had multiple students in other than Eastern or Central Time, would they consider perhaps working with us to see if we could pick a different time for them. Obviously, there's no one perfect time for anything, but if, for instance, you had a class of 16 students, just to pick a number, and it turns out that 7 of them are other than Eastern and Central Time, then it probably bears thinking about. So at the moment, we have not sort of made a pronouncement, if you will, but we have encouraged faculty to let us know as they're looking at their roster, because right now, with the exception of what we call the non-cells, the students who have yet to register for fall, and there are not that many left, but there are some, but with the exception of those students, everybody else is scheduled. So an instructor can look at their roster right now, and they can look at where students actually hail from. I encouraged faculty to just reach out to their class and say, tell me where you're going to be in the fall if you're not coming back in person, and then see what that tells you. So I'm assuming that most of them have done that. In this next week or so, we will start doing more of this because the registrar's office is now probably, what would I say, 5/8 full, finished with actually assigning rooms for classes that are scheduled currently to be in person or hybrid. Whether it's hybrid or remote or online or being done in person, we want to be able to know where people are in case there are going to be synchronous meetings, however they occur, in person, remotely, whatever. If there's going to be synchronous, that's where Jordan's question is important.
And Jordan, I would say that for this student particularly, she needs to be reaching out to Dina Nofrio to see what we can do in terms of trying to accommodate her schedule.
Thank you.
Welcome. Anybody else?
I had a question. If we are to go fully online, I know you already answered this with like the practice rooms in the library, but will there be a spot on campus where if we live really close, we could still go and sit and do our work if we have poor internet connection at our house?
Mike? Yes, I believe so. The library would be one option, but Mike, are you, are we looking at having other spots? For instance, how does the SRC lobby, et cetera,
Yes.
play into this?
Yeah, so we will have spaces throughout campus that are common areas where there's good Wi-Fi. There'll be outside the Cavallo room, there'll be the SRC lobby, and our intent is to open Starbucks if we're allowed. And have that opportunity for folks to sit there. Now, with the governor's current edict, we can only have 25 people in that lobby at any given time at this point, but hopefully he'll lift some of that. And then we're putting tents around campus, a series of tents, because we can't be in dining. So we're going to create outdoor dining spaces on the BLC upper patio. We're going to have a big tent that's going to hold about 120 to 150 people. We'll have the lower patios, there's all Wi-Fi things there. So you can go there. There's going to be a tent across from Daly's that's going to hold 40 or 50 people. There's going to be a tent in front of G Hall. Again, we located these tents where the Wi-Fi was strong, so that you could take your meal there and you could sit and eat outside and do your class or whatever you wanted to do. There's also going to be a tent on the Kaplan Plaza that will also has strong Wi-Fi in that location. So we're going to have these additional outdoor spaces so we don't feel like we're always inside and we're crammed. We got to wear our masks and, fresh air, keep fresh air flowing and keep moving about the campus. So we'll have all those opportunities to do your classes at various locations around the campus.
I don't want to speak for student affairs because we are still working our way through protocols for non-resident students to come to campus. But I also wanted to add that all of the practice rooms are typically in spaces that have Wi-Fi. So depending again on when you might come to campus or if you're kind of in between classes or something, it's indeed possible that there might be an open practice room where you could have a Wi-Fi access and be able to do that kind of work.
That's correct, Marshall. And there'll be 34 of those around campus.
Other questions?
Could you speak about the tents just a little bit more? I mean, when they were mentioned last time, we were all a bit confused by them because you weren't painting them exactly as like weatherproof. So we were wondering like how much of the semester they were going to be around given climate and the way that it goes from really, really hot to really, really cold. So is there going to be ways to adapt to that over the semester?
Yes. So what we're looking at is two separate types of tents: social tents and academic tents. So the academic tents were more geared towards supporting the hybrid option of classes, and those would go away probably mid-October because they would fulfill the hybrid need, and we know that weather is going to change. What we're doing with the other tents is we're oversizing them and putting the furniture and things more interior to the tent. As you may or may not know, the law here states that we have to have full 2 sides open to qualify as an outdoor space. In some instances, 3 sides. So putting sides on the tent actually defeats the purpose of having the tent. So what we're going to try and do is keep things more condensed inside so that you're in from the perimeter in case it rains or something else. And as it gets colder, we can introduce like some heating elements to it. But for the most part, they will be open.
Cool, good to know.
Okay. All right. Well, let's talk a little bit about the transition. And I think that we can do this even without having to use the chat feature in Zoom. As we're moving toward this, and I know we do have some of our students from FPA and WCC here, the first, I don't want to say question, but I'm just curious to learn, and we're all very curious to learn, what excites you about the fact that Westminster Choir College and the School of Fine and Performing Arts are now going to be together on one campus? Anyone?
Could I
Jess?
just,
Yeah, go
oh,
ahead.
okay, cool. Okay. This isn't really musical, I guess, but one thing that excited me was dailies because I walked in and I have a lot of food allergies. So when I saw that there was like the dedicated area of like none of the 8 common food allergens, I shed a tear. So I'm excited about that because the Westminster Dining Commons, it was sometimes really hard for me to find stuff that I'd be able to eat without having to eat like the same 3 meals every day. So I'm excited for some variety.
Excellent. Excellent. I'm glad to hear that. Anyone else?
I will say that I guess this is probably the most common comment on this, but I am just excited to collaborate and for cross-contamination to happen so that we get to know each other's different types of artistry better and can better empathize with each other as artists through the different lenses that we are coming from.
Yeah, that was very beautifully said. That's great.
I love it. I would just maybe change cross-contamination.
Not viruses.
Cross-pollination.
Ideas.
I love the thought. That's exactly right. I think, without putting words in anybody's mouth, I think the idea that you're now going to be an even larger community of artists, and you represent so many art forms and thoughts about artistry, I think that's going to be really exciting for me to watch and hopefully participate.
All of us.
Anybody else?
How many of you are wondering what the coming semester, how the probability of being remote for the coming semester is going to impact this integration?
Sorry, what was the question?
How do you think if we are all remote for the coming semester, how do you think that will impact the purpose of the reason for this integration, or the vision for the integration?
I mean, I think it'll be tough to do a lot of the stuff that we would be doing in person, such as singing and acting and that sort of innate collaboration that is really only possible when we're all together.
I think there'll be less interaction between the 2 communities that we were wanting to join together. I feel like it'll end up just being us sticking to our groups that we know now, since we can't cross-contaminate, if we're going to use that again.
If there's any positive, I would say that potentially, if we have less in-person requirements, that it would give Westminster Choir College students kind of an opportunity to get to know the campus on their own terms for a minute, rather than kind of being thrust into the heat of it on the first day. But there's pros and cons there, obviously.
All right. Anyone else? Can anybody think of what has them excited about this integration of the 2 schools within the college?
Gill Chapel sounds nice.
It does.
I'm excited for that. There's a lot of good stuff happening there. I actually had a question about it. Since we're making it such a universal space for like worship services and even dance and everything, so it's really the most versatile building on campus. I'm worried about, in a non-pandemic semester, its availability. And I know that my favorite part about Westminster was that Bristol was always open. Theoretically, it's only open for organ majors to go in and do stuff, but people would go in there and sing together, and they would play the pianos, and they would enjoy and use the space, and it was wonderful to have as a 24/7 space. So is there going to be that same sort of thing once we get out of this, sanitation stuff in a future semester, that Gill would be the same sort of 24/7 access? Or is there not going to be a spot on campus that we can go and use as a night owl performance space?
Absolutely. Great question, Charlie. Before your time at Westminster, which means before the Cullen Center, Bristol Chapel was in use, scheduled use, classes, rehearsals, and all that, easily 17 to 18 hours a day. It was only after we opened up the Cullen Center that we actually had space, if you will, more so time in the day for Bristol Chapel to do other things. That said, we always maintained that organ students got preference to use the facility, especially after hours, and we've already discussed that. The scheduling on the Lawrenceville campus is mostly done through auxiliary services. What I mean by mostly is classes are scheduled first by the registrar. Those are all put into our reservation system. Some of you know it's called 25 Live. After that, things are usually done through auxiliary services. We've had probably half a dozen meetings already. Most of you know Laura Wilson from the Princeton campus. Those on this campus know Kristen Rogers. The two of them are the gurus, shall we say, for scheduling things in the College of the Arts. So we've had meetings with the two of them, Bev Braddock, Monty. What's Monty's last name? Oh my goodness. I'm drawing a blank.
Monty Brown.
Her, thank you.
Yeah.
Monty Brown, Andrew Pignataro, and others to discuss the protocols. Again, how will people request space? But we've simultaneously discussed priorities. So for instance, when we get back to a post-COVID time, I think partly what's inside your question, Charlie, is even just things like student recitals. Likely we'll still use some type of a lottery system to actually pick dates, but we're going to make that a priority because that space is the primary recital space. Our calendar committee, which is College of the Arts wide and has been for several years, is the group that puts together when will we do concerts. So that's all of the choirs, of course, but it's also the pop rock ensemble and so on and so forth. So all of that will be part of a calendar that we develop, and then we will use the reservation system within priorities so that people who are doing recitals or concerts or things like that will be able to have the appropriate space. We're still discussing the 24/7 notion. That was never the case here at Lawrenceville. Normally speaking, the campus itself pretty much shuts down between 10 and midnight. So we're still talking about whether there will be a need for that, and if so, how would we accommodate that? At the Princeton campus, it was a little easier because of the size of the campus. One public safety officer could accommodate all of that. But we're talking about it. We have not made a decision about it. And I suspect that decision will be perhaps delayed until we see what the traffic demands. If we don't need a place to be open 24/7, we probably won't for safety and security reasons. But if it's needed, I'm sure we'll be discussing how to make that happen.
I do have to get in there and clean. Just got to give me a little bit of time. And we'll keep it open as long as we can, but I got to clean.
Even in the non-pandemic, you got to clean.
I will add though, on the Lawrenceville campus, we also have three theaters and 3 or so studios as well. And like for late night either singing or dancing or any of those moments that we have to have. There's usually one of the spaces available for sure.
And we're adding 5 more in fine arts. Those won't be dancing necessarily, but there will be room to move. But they will have pianos. They could easily be part of a music theater rehearsal, an opera rehearsal. The rooms will be certainly big enough, even right now, to accommodate a small theatrical rehearsal. You know, a room of 32 people with social distancing should easily be able to accommodate 5 or 6 students kind of scattered in the room. So we're adding more places for that access.
Any last thoughts about what is exciting about this transition and whatnot?
I have some. One of them was not only artistically interacting with people, but socially interacting with Westminster students. And so I guess that comes up now in a form of a concern that being, should the semester be remote, being on Zoom for the majority of our classes or all of our classes, many hours a day, it concerns me that like there will be little want to participate in extracurricular activities that are occurring online after hours or before at school class hours. So I guess in a windy way, I'm wondering, because this hasn't been answered yet, if the semester starts off as remote, is there any chance that should New Jersey get into stage 3 during the course of the semester, would the semester go back to hybrid at a certain point?
Probably.
All the administrators are sighing.
Yeah.
I think we're all speechless because we'd like to say, yes, there's a possibility, but we feel that that possibility is really slim. And
Right.
would certainly defer to Marshall and Donna Jean because it's mostly an academic decision, but it's really hard to transition a class that you design in one format to another on a short notice.
Yes. And so when we talked with faculty and we gave them the choice of modality, all of the faculty who chose on ground or one of the hybrid modalities, they were told you need to be ready to pivot at any moment to a remote modality, because even if we were able to start on ground, depending on what the infection rate becomes, they might have had to have pivoted. And so now they're being told
pivot time.
Yeah. So I think to then say pivot and then say pivot again, you know, at some point they're going to get very exasperated, and it interrupts your flow. So once you get into a class and that flow begins, regardless of the modality, to interrupt it, that could be more harmful to the learning process than advantageous. Even though I hear what you're saying, Kristen, y'all want to be together, y'all want to be able to socialize, and hopefully we'll have a vaccine and we can get y'all all back together and have that happen.
Well, that being said, though, is there a possibility, you know, should things take a turn for the better sometime towards the end of this year, that, you know, perhaps we could consider social events that are, you know, more.
Yeah, that's where I was just going to go, Dylan, was to say, you know, the academic part is trickier to pivot. But in terms of out of class events and opportunities to gather, you know, we just have to adhere to the state guidelines, and we'll continuously be monitoring that. And I think we have a lot more flexibility to still have opportunities to have people gather if we move to a less restrictive stage.
Sure. Thank you.
I think one of the big questions is going to be, even if we go to stage 3, what other restrictions? Is there still quarantine? So if any of you come from, right now, I think the list is maybe still 38 states. If you come from one of those and have to quarantine for 2 weeks, how would that work? And so on and so on. And we want to be very respectful of safety for people who, for whatever reasons, are in at-risk categories. So even though stage 3 says it's getting better, I would be remiss if I didn't say to you, it doesn't mean it goes away. It just means it got better. And until we truly have a vaccine and truly have addressed the issue of people and the vaccine, we'd have to be careful. I'm of an age where we thought we had eradicated measles, and there were enough people who never got vaccinated. And if you've read any articles from the last 10 years, several universities have had major measles outbreaks, to the point where a couple of them had to shut down for 2 weeks and so on. So this one's very serious, that we not kind of repeat that. I don't want to call it a mistake, but we don't want to repeat that scenario. So we have to be very careful that if we're literally going to open the doors, we need to feel very comfortable that everybody walking through that door has a place of safety. So there's all that, but I think I can speak for all of us on this call, and absolutely all the faculty and all the students not on the call in the College of the Arts. We want to be together. What we do is social. What we do is collaborative. What we do is integrational, and we want that. And so yeah. It was hard to come to this campus today. There's nobody here except tradespeople. And it's funny to be in a building that's empty.
Yeah, I'm kind of tired of seeing the same faces for the last 5 months. I could use some new ones.
There you go. There you go.
Yeah, the day will come when we have to get out of our pajama bottoms and actually wear real clothes from top to bottom. So Kristen, you kind of started off the next question I was going to ask, but I did want to just watch my time. And that is, what are your concerns about this transition? But I'm going to ask you, as you think about or voice these concerns, if you could also think about what a possible approach would be to address those concerns as well. That would be really great.
While people are thinking of concerns, I just have something that just hit me, if you don't mind indulging me for a second. What is the status of the fine arts building renovation that we saw the plans for early this last school year, with the big second floor recital hall and other such renovations to the exterior facade and whatnot?
So those, Charlie, have been tabled as of now. With the pandemic and everything hitting, we tabled a lot of the other projects, the larger science projects being modified, and some of the other projects that we were pursuing have kind of been tabled until we see how we come out on the other side of this pandemic and then this transition and everything else. So the plans are still live, but again, it's whether we're going to be able to fund those or not and how they fit into our future plans going forward.
So, concerns?
And feel free to think broadly. Transition doesn't have to be just about Westminster, but just what's bugging you about the fall.
I'm worried that in the meshing of WCC and WCA, that we'll lose that independent sphere of WCC that I feel like has been a driving force behind its success and notoriety, at least in the last decade or two. I'm not sure really what a solution would be to that, but perhaps in some twisted sort of way, the pandemic will help, because if that doesn't allow for much meshing between WCC and WCA, we'll have that little community still. And then when we're all back on campus, I'm not sure how independent we will seem from Rider and WCA and FPA as a whole.
while the rest of you are thinking of another question, I have a couple of quick thoughts in response to what Charlie just stated. The new marketing and communications arm of the university is deeply committed to trying to make sure that this transition is reported accurately, that what we put in front of the public is not only accurate, but deeply explanatory of how things work. So as I think you all know, we're about to launch a new website. And Ann Sears has worked deeply with Pam Abacia in the marketing and communications area. Sorry, I'm pointing at Centennial Hall. Forgot that you don't know where I'm sitting. They've been talking a great deal about making sure that the very different things that go on in the College of the Arts, while presented as part of a totality, are also clearly identified for their uniqueness. So we want to highlight all the collaborations that are hopefully going to be coming, all of the ways that faculty and students are getting together to design things that are better than they could have been if we were separated. But simultaneously, we want to continue to celebrate the things that are different because they are individual. So musical theater has been growing leaps and bounds at the Lawrenceville campus and is achieving a growing reputation. We don't want that lost as part of an integration. Similarly, we do not want what happens with Westminster Symphonic Choir to get lost. So we're talking now about how our publicity campaign, to use that word, I guess, is going to make sure we celebrate the parts and that the whole is bigger than the sum of the parts, but that people can identify with the thing that always attracted them to Rider University, whether that is what we do with voice and choirs through Westminster Choir College or through theater, which is the oldest program here in fine arts, and so on. We want to make sure that both of that becomes known to people as we build the transition, as we launch a new website. So while I'm not terribly interested, me personally as dean, continuing what sometimes we would call a silo approach, I'm very interested that we give credit where credit is due. And that means sometimes we celebrate a student in biology, and sometimes we celebrate the sciences. And both of those have a place in an institution of higher ed. So I think that if I were to put my words on what Charlie said before about the idea of the independent feel, much of what it's going to do will be independent within a full university. And in some ways, that's every department. There's a level of independence within a full university. And I think as we celebrate both of those, the sum truly is bigger. The whole is truly bigger, sorry, than the sum of the parts. So I'm looking forward to that, where we celebrate sort of the microcosm and the macrocosm as often as we can. And that actually is going to be harder to do until we're together. It's going to be easier to celebrate the microcosm. But I look forward to both, because I think that's the 21st century art.
I have a question about that. Because while we want to absolutely recognize, going off of Charlie's thing, Westminster Choir College's identity, and then through the press and through publicity and the website and recognizing the individual departments, I think what I'm wondering about as well is the identity and independence, but the independence that comes with our tight-knit community, and with that getting lost in the integration, because that was one of the things that attracted me to Westminster, was the tight-knit small community and the opportunities that you get with that community. And so I think a lot of people are wondering with this integration that we'll be so focused on integration that we're not going to focus on the identity of Westminster Choir College.
You bet. I have a question in response to that I'd love to hear from you, the students. So I think you're absolutely correct, Sarah. There was a sense of a community that was internal, if you will. But remember, some of that was due to physical. You were all on the same campus, but some is due to curriculum. So my question is, for all of you, Westminster and non-Westminster, where do you think you're still going to be part of a cohort, and where will you be part of the larger community? I'd love to hear your thoughts before I say anything.
I'm sorry, you broke up. I had some
Oh.
technology problems. Can you repeat your question?
Oh, absolutely. I'm interested in hearing from all of you, where is it that even when you come to be at the Lawrenceville campus in person, where will you still be part of a cohort? And where will you be part of the larger university community? And there's a hidden agenda to my question. Those of you who have spoken with me about this know where I'm going. But where do you think you're still going to be tight-knit? And where is there a place where you're sort of going to be in a bigger knit?
I think a large source of our anxiety is that we don't know where that line is, and we fear that even if we get an answer, that line might move in the future.
Okay, fair enough. Somebody else?
Onto with what Charlie said, I agree with that. I don't know where that line is. And what I do know is that on the Westminster campus, no matter where I was or who I was with, I knew that that person was also sharing the same experiences with me, and they knew exactly what I was going through because, you know, it's like we're all in this together, you know. And with the transition, that sort of changes because, you know, I'm not going to know everybody. I'm not always going to be with everybody and get to know everyone in Westminster College of the Arts, you know.
Somebody else? So let me offer this. The music classes that you take, are those cohort or community? Would you agree that that's cohort because you have to be a Westminster student to be in those? Would you then next think, okay, in a typical semester, I take 72,000 credits because you're a music student, right? So all kidding aside, most of you take either 17 or 18 credits every semester. Of those 17 or 18, how many of those were general education? And typically for most of you, if any were, it was usually 3 credits, as in one course, meaning the vast majority of your credits were in very specific courses. And that's still going to be the case. The place where it's going to be different is in foreign language, which is open to the whole campus. But things like English and Italian diction, and let's see, Introduction to Lyric Singing, and music theory, musicianship, and all of that, those are all cohort-based to Westminster Choir College students. Any student getting into that that's not Westminster will do so by dint of testing and an audition. So the cohort for the bulk of your classroom experiences is maintained. Your choirs, your voice lesson. In fact, I would dare say you're going to now have all of your music faculty in the very same building. So they are literally all together. So that piece of it is still going to be cohort based. You will get to know the people in Westminster Choir College very quickly, as you always did. However, you will now get the chance to be in a community as you think about the things that are College of the Arts. So you may choose to take an acting course because you aspire to a career on the stage. And you're thinking, well, I want to be an opera. Well, that's great, but modern opera is actually pretty different from bel canto 1890s. You're going to have to be in a whole other mindset to do contemporary opera. You might take an acting course, and it might be that Kristen Wisniewski is in that class with you. And you get to realize, I'm still in a cohort. It's just a little bigger one now. It's the people who like to work with acting or movement and so on. And then there is also the opportunity, if you are so disposed, to get to know people across the campus. And some of you have heard me say this. I think actually you may have been in a meeting where I said, a lot of this is about choice. If you want to spend 20 hours a day in a practice room, that's still your choice. But what's exciting is it's also a choice to go to the pub and watch a soccer game and so on. And I would dare say that in your lifetime, becoming more and more familiar with non-arts people is going to be critical to the survival of the arts and your survival. So a lot of people have made a big issue out of the fact, why don't more people give to the arts? Well, I'll leave you to answer that for yourself, but I will suggest the following. If you're a person who has never interacted with the arts in any way, shape, or form, it doesn't occupy a place of importance for you. So if you had a couple $1 million that you wanted to do something with, you don't even think about it. And our job is to make people think about it. Why is the soul of humankind so important? Well, it's because we do art, all the kinds of arts. How can we help that business person who might be in a position to give us the founding gift for a $75 million performing arts center? I guarantee you there's no graduate of Westminster Choir College that's going to be able to make that founding gift. That $20 million founding gift that we start to match. But I guarantee you there are people who have graduated in colleges of business at Rider and every place else that could do that. People who are MDs. But they don't necessarily think about it unless their life had somehow been transformed. And you getting to meet those people, hearing what they think about, more importantly, what they don't think about. Oh my goodness. And it helps you to practice your argument. So if you go off and you want to form your own theatrical company, you are a conductor and you say, you know what? I know I'm never going to get a gig as a choral conductor at 22 years of age. I'm going to found my own choir. Great. How are you going to pay for the expenses? Renting a rehearsal hall, hiring an accompanist, putting out publicity. You're going to have to work with people that have those resources. So it's a chance to do that. But again, it's a choice. Please don't misunderstand me. We are not going to drag you kicking and screaming to a soccer match, a volleyball match, a men's or women's basketball game. They're just choices. But that is the future, way more than anything I've lived in my life. And I think that's the exciting piece. But you still have the comfort, my word, nobody else's, of the cohort. You will still be singing in choir with the people you always sang next to in choir. So sorry if I sound like I'm preaching. I don't mean to. It's just, as I've lived my life, I've had to be in front of many people who have no anything about the arts. They have no knowledge. They didn't know it was important. And they stand there and say, well, you should just go raise the money. Well, sure. Why do you think I'm standing in front of you? And so on. And the more we kind of get more people aware of this. So right now, I can tell you when I speak with a lot of non-artistic people, they're responding to COVID as if anybody is a great artist because everybody's putting up a video from their living room. And I'm going to guess you agree with me. Some of those things are terrible. So let's not confuse what's up there with high quality, first of all, and let's not confuse it with that which you, students and practitioners of these arts, are going to be able to do and do now. So I'll shut up now. But that's something I've been living with from way back in the dark ages when I was a public school music teacher.
And you're way back in the dark ages right now without any power.
That's it. My wife and I are in a house without power for 50 plus hours now. Anyway, I'll be quiet.
Oh,
So-
well, we're actually at the end of our time. I'm sorry, somebody's going to say something.
Oh, well, I was just going to respond to that because I agree. I mean,
Go ahead.
I don't think that any Westminster student is saying, oh, I don't want to interact with Rider students, or, oh, I don't want to, like, I don't think anybody's saying that, because, I mean, we go over to Rider campus, or we used to, we're going to be there now, but, you know, we would go over to Rider campus, we would go and be a part of these things, and, you know, sporting events, and, you know, especially with the MT majors, I did a few shows with MT majors over at Westminster, like, they're, you know, everybody in this group are amazing people. Like, you know, WCA is great. With all of that, and with the integration, and of course, like, we want to, I mean, I'm a music ed major. Like, I want to interact with people who may not appreciate the arts, or who aren't educated in the arts, and I want to share those ideas. I think we still have this worry because of the whole history of this long integration process, and from miscommunication in the past, and from things not being as clear, and feeling like that things were not as transparent as they could be. I think that a lot of the students are just worried, and it's not going to be fixed in one meeting call, and we don't expect that everybody has the answers, but I think we do expect that faculty and admin keep thinking about the students are worried, and the students do have this concern, and I don't know, I think it just needs more conversation in order for people to feel more comfortable that they're still getting the community that they were attracted to and signed up for, and that they're still getting that, and and they are getting this new opportunity to communicate and to interact with people who, you know, are business and science majors. Like, that is so important. But I just think that there's a worry being expressed, and we do know the positives of the integration, and we're not saying that we don't appreciate those positives. We're just saying we're still worried. So I think that's just at least what I'm trying to get across, is that we're not, we're not like anti, like, interacting with people from different majors, because I love learning about other people's perspectives and majors, but I think we're just still concerned. And I know that we're out of time and everything, but I appreciate you all having this forum and listening to our concerns about this.
Well, I do appreciate what you just said, Sarah. You clarified some things as well for all of us. I will tell you that there are students at Westminster who are not where you are. And they've told me to my face, I'm afraid to go to Lawrenceville. They've told me to my face, I don't want to interact with any people. I want to be in my little environment.
Yes, well, and I think that is because that their worry, because I have that same worry. I think that worry outweighs any of the positives that the administration has been, and that you all have been presenting to us. Because a lot of people want to stay in this community because it is valuable. And even if integration and working with other people in different majors and different faculty, even though that there are positives to that, it's not exactly all that we signed up for. And so I think it's going to take more of the recognition of what we're losing, because we are losing parts of our tradition. I mean, the campus is a part of our Princeton campus is a part of our identity and tradition, and you know, traditional conservatory and Western practice has a lot of tradition seeped into the identity. And so by having this transition quickly, which is nobody's fault, it's just how it's going, that I can see how a lot of people would have and I had this response as well, and of being a little more defensive. And I'm still apprehensive. I'll be honest. But I think that more of an effort to recognize the identity and the history that we're coming from, and making that more of a point in these forums. And I don't think that it can be fixed in one forum or one email or anything like that. But I think starting that healing process is very important. And if people feel like that it's not coming from a genuine place, they're not going to accept it. And that's everybody's personal thing. So, but yeah, that's just what I would say about that. Yeah.
Sarah, if I could just say thank you for sharing that. That is very much appreciated. That you're sharing your honesty with us on that. I'm Drew Armando. I'm Vice President for Enrollment Management, and I chaired with Dr. Onofrio the identity transition team last year. Dylan was on it, Sarah was on it, Dr. Vodica, and lots of people across both campuses. It is one of the reasons why we did not rush to re-identifying identity or trying to make an identity last year. After 6 months of meetings, we decided we need more time. We need to soak it in. We need to absorb. We need to learn. I sat through Dr. Vodica's classes and actually tried to sing, believe it or not. You did. I'm glad you missed that. But it's important that both identity, history, traditions, and cultures are all embraced as we move forward to really come to what might be, an identity moving forward. It won't be exactly the same. It might be different, but it's got to capture the essence of two very proud communities that bring a lot of great stuff to the table. So thank you for that. And I will say, Dr. Onofrio and I are going to continue that work moving into this fall with identity, with that same task force, and it will expand as well.
So what I'm going to say, sir, though, is you gave us a great segue, because these meetings, this is not just a one and done type of situation. It was our intention that we were going to be meeting on a very regular basis with students who wanted to come and talk to us about the transition and help us to move through this. It's not just to talk, but to help us think about ways that we can address any issues and concerns. And so we will continue these meetings and these conversations. And the Cultures and Traditions group is also trying to get our meetings up and running again for the academic year, to not only look at those cultures and traditions that are so very near and dear to the WCC students' hearts, but also to address some of the issues that the students have brought forward in the recent petition that the WCC students signed, because we need to address that as well. And so this is not a conversation that we're stopping today. This was the beginning of the conversation. I have often said, although Mike Reckitt just looks at me and says, yeah, that's easy for you to say, the easy part of this transition was getting the facilities ready for y'all. That was the easiest aspect of it. The work that we need to do to really make this a strong Westminster, to what Marshall had said, a strong Westminster College of the Arts that respects and celebrates the identities of the Westminster Choir College and the School of Fine and Performing Arts. That's the work that we have in front of us. And so the transition team work doesn't stop because we're opening buildings and having y'all on our campus August 31st. It continues, and it's going to continue probably for 2 to 3 years. And we all recognize that. So we will continue the conversation. But I do know that a few of us are probably a few minutes late right now to the next meeting. So what I'm going to do is wish you all a very wonderful next, what is it, 2.5, 3 weeks? Today's the 6th. We have 25 days, and then the semester begins. So if we don't see you before then, we'll see y'all then. And I hope you have time to rest, relax, enjoy your family before we kick it all off for another very interesting and exciting academic year. So Y'all take care.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye, everyone.